Greetings, everyone. Senator Jeff Merkley here, and I've just come from the President's State of the Union speech over in the House chamber on the other side of the Capitol. And I must say we are at an extraordinary moment in American history. This is probably the first State of the Union that has been delivered by an authoritarian president who is gleefully breaking the laws of the United States and violating the Constitution that he took an oath to just weeks ago. It is for that reason that the audience of members in the chamber tonight were deeply divided, with my Republican colleagues cheering on every statement, standing and trying to create something of a success story for a man who has not delivered for America. In fact, has painted a vision that is deeply troubling for America. He has a plan, and the plan is very simple. Families lose, and billionaires win. But tonight, he didn't want to talk about the three main components of his plan. So let me tell you a little bit about it, what he should have shared, but didn't share because his plan is hugely unpopular. The first part of it is to do $2 trillion in cuts to programs to health care and housing and education, the very programs that American families depend upon to be able to stand on their feet, thrive, and move into the middle class. The second part of his plan is to give some $4.5 trillion in tax breaks, with some $2 trillion of that going to the very richest Americans. Does anyone in our home state really believe that the billionaires or mega millionaires of this world need more tax cuts? And tax cuts paid for by cutting the programs that families depend on. Families lose and billionaires win. And to accomplish this goal, his plan is to increase the deficit by some $2.5 trillion. And tonight, he wasn't honest with the American people. He said he's going to pursue a balanced budget. But in fact, his budget will increase the deficit by $2.5 trillion over the 10 years of the plan. So why wasn't the president honest tonight? Honest with the American people about his plan to cut $2 trillion in programs, massive cuts to Medicaid, massive cuts to education, to housing programs, to help us meet the challenge of affordable housing across America. And the answer is that he is engaged in a profound game. That game is to paint one picture, and that picture during his campaign and continue tonight is that he'll be a champion for America's families, while the real plan is one he doesn't want to talk about. Families lose and billionaires win. I was struck tonight by the fact not only did he come across as unwilling to share his vision and therefore the impacts, but it sounded a whole lot like the promoter at a carnival booth who is yelling out to the crowd, "Come here, I've got a wonderful idea for you. Spend your money here, throw the darts, pop the balloons, toss the balls into a bowl of goldfish. You'll be a big winner. You'll take home a prize." And that was just kind of the tone of his speech. The carnival barker laying out a vision of happiness for if only you'll step up to the counter and hand over your hard-earned money. It's kind of continuation of the scam that President Trump has engaged in his whole life. And I'll tell you what else bothered me tonight, and that was his commentary on foreign policy. He has proceeded since coming into office to do everything imaginable that could have been desired on the wish list of Putin, the dictator of Russia. Let's just kind of count some of the ways that he has carried Putin's water for him. First, he accused Ukraine of invading Russia when, we all watched those several years ago as the Russian tanks surrounded Ukraine and Russian ships on the shores, the south shores of Ukraine, and all feared that within a few days they would roll to success. I think the whole world thought that Ukraine had but days to survive. But through their courage, through their determination, and through the help of fellow democracies, they have managed to stave off this enormously powerful imperialist dictatorship from the north and save their country because they truly believe in the values that we believe in. The freedoms, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, the freedom of assembly, the freedom of press. Well, they had gone through the Orange Revolution and threw out a leader who tried to put them under Putin's thumb, and now they have fought valiantly year after year, just as we would to defend our republic. But here is Trump accusing Ukraine of being the aggressor. What a complete Orwellian contortion of the truth. And then he proceeds to issue more Russian propaganda saying that, in fact, it's Zelensky who is the dictator. And then he proceeds to announce that he's scaling down and ending our electronic campaign that keeps working at the scams and the trouble that Russia is inflicting on us here in the United States. This whole cyber warfare. Why should we stand down on cyber warfare? That's exactly what Putin wants. And then he proceeds to say that no matter where the negotiations go, they won't include a security guarantee from the United States and or any kind of membership in NATO. That might well be something that is agreed to at a negotiating table, but it certainly isn't something you give away in advance of negotiations. And now he has done the task of putting an end to the transfer of weapons that Congress paid for and Congress prepared to transfer. Without the ammunition and the weapons, he is just making Ukraine a powerless victim against the Russian army. Now, the Europeans may well step in, and they're certainly meeting to consider that right now. But just recognize that this reckless abandonment of a republic that has invested everything in fending off a powerful dictator has been the hallmark of American leadership in the world, standing up for democracy, standing up for freedom. And Trump, he's standing up for a dictator who shares none of these values and doing that dictator's work for him. That is completely shameful. So, tonight I'm going to answer a few of the questions that you all have sent to me. I'm going to try to keep this fairly brief. So I'll read the questions, share it with you. And I am just delighted that a few of you, I gather, well, we've got over 1,000 people. That's great. That's wonderful. But Michael from Milwaukee, we'll put your question up front. I depend on Social Security to pay my rent. I work almost full-time to cover all my other expenses. Is it possible that I'm going to stop receiving Social Security payments? I don't know how I would survive without them. I would probably lose my rental. And you know, when people lose their rental, a good chance they're going to end up homeless. So, Michael, thank you for asking that question. I believe that Democrats and some Republicans will join us to rally to make sure that Social Security honors the obligations that have been forged between generations. This is an intergenerational compact. Now, in order to make sure that we have the funds to do this over the next 70 years, because that's the horizon that folks look at, the security of that horizon, we're going to need some Republican partnership. I held meetings all over Oregon and invited people to go through the different ideas that think tanks had produced about how to make sure Social Security is solvent. And they all came up with the same answer. They said, make those more affluent people pay more premiums on their higher amount of income. So we have more money coming in. We can make it solvent for 70 years, and we can proceed to even provide more benefits for those at the bottom. And you know, half of our Social Security recipients depend upon Social Security for 90% or more of their income after they retire. Your concern, though, raises another question, and that is that Trump is intent upon savaging the employees who administer Social Security. And he's letting Elon Musk gain access to all of the computer data. So one thing, this is a massive violation of our privacy. Second of all, you get a bunch of folks unfamiliar with the code, they could mess it up. In which case you might miss some payments, Michael, not because Social Security is insolvent, we still have a surplus in the trust fund, but because these young minions of Musk proceed to make a mistake because they're coming in and messing around in a system they don't know. I want to have professionals. I don't want to have loyalist minions, lackeys, running the Social Security world. I want professionals who want to make sure that you, Michael, and everyone else gets that Social Security check, and that's what I'm going to be fighting for. But that is my concern about Elon Musk and his team messing around in our systems. Susie, your question is up next. Susie from Corvallis. I'm a rural property owner in Oregon. What are you and other West Coast Congress people doing to address the need for robust wildland firefighting crews in the wake of Trump administration layoffs and hiring freezes? This is a critical function that needs experienced and well-trained people. Hiring freezes and layoffs for our firefighting crews are a terrible idea. You are so correct. And tonight, my guest at the State of the Union speech name is Isabella Isaacson, and Isabella was summarily laid off from her work as a firefighter. She had just come back. She's an Oregon team member. She had just come back from being on a fire crew in North Carolina because fire crews help each other out. Not so common for us to have wildfires on the East Coast the way it is on the West Coast, but certainly they've had them, and Isabella went to help. You know, Isabella represented our country at the, I think it was the 2016 Olympics. And then she joined the Army. And she worked very hard and very dedicated in the Army. And then she wanted to take her spirit of public service, bring it to Oregon. She's originally from Arkansas. She always wanted to live in Oregon, so she recognizes the paradise that our state is. And pursue her public service through being part of our Forest Service team. She was summarily dismissed with one of those emails you've heard so much about that were sent out and basically said, you have not met our performance standards and we don't need you and you're fired. That's more or less what it said. It just treated our dedicated, passionate workers. You know, she worked from May to October because we had those horrific fires last year in Oregon, taking just 2 days off, 2 days from May to October. That's the type of dedicated public servant that responds and is there every time we need them, goes above and beyond. And I've gone out and visited a lot of fire crews, a lot of fire stations during fires, and I can tell you when those folks come together, they know what they're doing, and thank God they do, and our job is to get them more crews, be able to fund fair pay, be able to make sure they have the equipment. But here is President Trump and Elon Musk coming in and just summarily firing a whole hell bunch of our Forest Service personnel. You know, she talked about it, about the dedicated crews she's been part of, about how our forests in Oregon are part of our culture. They're part of our economy. She noted that a whole bunch of the forests that she works on, the Ochako, also is grazing land. It's part of the rangeland economy as well as being a U.S. forest that we all own because we, the citizens of the United States, own these special places. So I appreciate your question, Susie. Here's what we're trying to do. One is we're carrying this fight through enormous amount of conversation, dialogue with the administration saying you're making a massive mistake, so stop and reverse. Now that may not sound like much, but in fact the administration has on a number of instances now reversed what they've done when we point out how completely counterproductive it is. a small share of the bad messes that they are making, but still we're going to carry that fight. We're going to carry it through the funding bills of this coming year, and we will have partnership from across the aisle, because fires just aren't a blue county or a red county. They affect everyone. They're not just a blue state or a red state. So I'm cultivating partners in Idaho and Montana and other states that are both often represented on the opposite side of the aisle. So it's a huge mistake. We're striving to reverse it. We're going to use our power of the purse in this coming year to help restore the vision and keep carrying that fight. We lost 2 million, almost 2 million acres last year, the most acres ever lost in fires. In 2000, I proceeded to travel 600 miles up and down our state, never got out of the smoke from the Labor Day fires, saw 6 towns burned to the ground, another set of towns scorched. We know the dangers. This is so important in so many ways for our economy, for our ecosystem, for decreasing the smoke that affects people's health. Thomas of North Bend. Now this is North Bend over on the coast. If Trump insists on making the tax cuts for billionaires permanent, why not combine it with raising the cap on contributions to Social Security to the point it is fully funded? So, well, this is actually what on the Social Security part, Thomas, this is what I was talking about before, that when I held workshops all over Oregon, the folks said the best strategy was for the more affluent, who are earning more wages, to pay premiums on those higher wages, which will then make Social Security solvent. So absolutely should be included, but realize these tax cuts for the billionaires, those are being done through a process called reconciliation, which is a filibuster-free pathway that was voted on and supported by all 100 members of the Senate back in 1974. But then the Republicans did what's called a nuclear option in 1996. And a nuclear option is when you reinterpret the plain letter of the law, and they had a parliamentarian reinterpret the plain letter of the law, which said it was only for the purpose of deficit reduction, to say we can also use it for tax cut legislation, which increases the deficit, the opposite of what those hundreds senators voted for 22 years before. And so they are using this partisan strategy because we would never let a tax bill go through like this that cuts $2 trillion from programs families depend on, families lose, to deliver $2 trillion to the richest Americans. Billionaires win. Think about how when Trump was inaugurated, he had that group of billionaires standing right behind him. That's the real cabinet of the United States of America. And that is not a cabinet that was either vetted by the Senate. That is not a cabinet that has official roles, but this is the strategy of the Trump administration. So I would say one thing that I would like better, and that is instead of combining tax cuts for billionaires with improving Social Security, let's not do tax cuts for the billionaires. And let's invest some of that savings in the programs that should never be cut, but let's also increase the premiums on higher income individuals because they have been blessed by a good path in life. And the way you pay premiums in insurance is you pay it when you're able, and then it insures those who end up in need in their golden years, because you don't want the golden years to be ones where people are suffering. So yes to improving Social Security, but no need to partner it with a tax cut for billionaires. And in fact, there's no way the Republicans doing that bill on their own are going to look out to improve Social Security, because Social Security is not for billionaires. And remember, their plan is families lose and billionaires win. Is this one the next one here? Yep. Okay, we have Inika from Newport. Can Congress do anything to support Ukraine without the president? And will Americans stationed abroad continue to be there to protect Europe? So I took with me a flag tonight, a Ukrainian flag, And when Trump started talking about Ukraine, I held this up like this over my head. I don't know that no camera would have pivoted, the one that was on the president, but some of the press gallery turned and saw it. I was sending a pretty powerful message that we must stand with Ukraine. Ukraine is the democracy. Ukraine is a place where people are fighting for their freedoms. These are the American values. America has always been the champion of these freedoms around the world. If we are not that champion, who will be? And what other dictator will seek to crush a democracy? Think about Xi, the ruler of China, watching what's happening right now, thinking, I wonder if I can crush Taiwan. I was in Taiwan for the second ever presidential election, and I must say the spirit of freedom was astounding. People were so excited to have freedom of speech. They no longer got imprisoned for speaking out against one-party rule. The party that had ruled them forever was known as the Kuomintang. The Kuomintang, now suddenly you had another party that was putting out a different vision, and there was free debate, and people were just so excited. We sometimes forget how incredible it is to live with the freedoms that we have in the United States of America. And it is in our blood, it is in our DNA to stand with the democracies of the world, not with the dictators who want to crush that vision of the opportunity to be represented and have government by and for the people. So your question, is there anything we can do to support Ukraine? I can tell you on both sides of the aisle, there have been a lot of champions for Ukraine, but Trump has been starting to crush those champions on the Republican side. We've started to see them disappear. So I'm saying to them, remember what your viewpoint was a year ago. Stand up for freedom. Stand up for republics. Stand up for democracy. Stand with the people of Ukraine. Join us and make sure we continue to lay out the law. And here's the thing, in a separation of powers, it's Congress that lays out the law, it's the president who executes it. We have to use that congressional power. Your other part of the question was, Americans continue to be in Europe? Well, as long as we are full partners in NATO, yes, but I can tell you this, and that is right now, after Trump's attack on Ukraine and the leader of Ukraine, there were emergency meetings held by the leaders of Europe coming together saying, how can we back Ukraine without America? How can we make sure that we, the Western European nations, stand for freedom and stand for democracy? I must say we've got to come around and remain engaged, but as long as we are part of NATO, there would continue to be U.S. troops. But with the president abandoning Ukraine, will he abandon NATO next? He also already in his first administration raised the questions about Article 5 as to whether we would be there to fight if there was an attack on the European nations. And in fact, that's the heart of what NATO is. So your question is well placed. As of now, we are there, we're still part of NATO, but President Trump may try to change that. Ann from Fossil, Oregon. No, I love the town of Fossil, and it's only a few hundred people. I probably get the numbers wrong, but I'm guessing about 500. What a beautiful little valley it sits in. I've gone there many times in my process of visiting every county every year and holding a town hall, and you have the most beautiful town hall to be found in the entire state. Or I guess maybe it's the county headquarters, a beautiful brick building. I just became old enough for Medicare. Now I'm wondering if that will go away. I think Medicare is fairly safe. Medicare is another partnership between the generations. It is certainly a place where we could design it better. We need to make improvements on it to deliver more cost-effective care. One of the things we should be doing is we should negotiate the price of every drug so that Americans do not pay more than the citizens of other developed countries. we sometimes pay vast sums more for the same drug, even though we, the American taxpayer, are the ones who put the most money into the research and development to develop those drugs. We should get the best price in the developed world, not the worst. And we can make some improvements on Medicare, but it still sustains a lot of bipartisan support. So I think we are fine there. The program I'm much more concerned about is Medicaid. Medicaid has been a target of President Trump in the past, and Medicaid, the idea of the Republicans is, oh, health care should be something you get if you're fortunate enough to have a job, as opposed to health care being a right. Every other developed country has a unified health care system that delivers a lot better health care at a lot lower cost. But we have a fractured system. We have all kinds of different insurance in the middle, all kinds of different private competing for-profit companies. We have Medicaid for Americans who are getting on their feet. We have Medicare for our seniors. We have different programs related to nursing home care and to disabilities that are embedded in Medicaid. Medicaid has been the target of the Republicans, and they're planning $800 billion in cuts in their plan. We have been pointing out all the things that Medicaid does. If you're looking for drug recovery programs being financed, it's largely financed. If you want people to get off drugs, largely financed through Medicaid. Medical and extra support for those with disabilities, often Medicaid. Nursing home care for our seniors, Medicaid. So Medicaid serves many functions besides basic health care, and recognize that in rural areas, which rural areas tend to be more Republican than urban areas, the Medicaid plays a much bigger role in the medical system. And it was because of the Medicaid expansion that we had so many more funds flow into our rural clinics and rural hospitals in Oregon, because there were a whole lot of people who couldn't pay their bill before were able to pay their bill because they were able to get onto Medicaid. So not too concerned about Medicare, very concerned about Medicaid. I think we have time to take two more questions. So this one is from Sandy. Attacking and then controlling, and this is, excuse me, not from Sandy, this is from Don, who lives in the town of Sandy on the slopes of Mount Hood, on the way to Mount Hood, Highway 26. Attacking and then controlling the media is essential for an authoritarian leader to succeed. We have already seen the president's efforts in this regard by his lawsuits filed against CBS and ABC, the banning of the Associated Press from briefings, and the investigations into PBS and NPR, and the attacks on individual journalists. What can you and your fellow members do to protect members of the media? And how can individuals assist you and other members of Congress in your efforts? You know, I mentioned at the front that we're in an extraordinary time because the president deliberately breaking laws and violating the Constitution, the separation of powers over the power of the purse. But there's even more that points to his authoritarian tendencies and his desire to consolidate power in the presidency. It's a theory called unitary presidency that basically means, you know what? The Constitution, when it laid out that Congress makes laws and president influences them, should actually be more like Congress makes suggestions and the president decides what laws he will enforce or what additional rules he will create or what independent agencies will no longer be independent. In other words, the president becomes largely the legislating force as well as the executing force. This is the way that we have lost democracies around the globe, lost republics around the globe, when Congress starts to acquiesce in an authoritarian president. And one of the things an authoritarian president wants to do is get rid of the watchdogs. So one of the first things President Trump did was fire, by different counts, 17 or 18 inspector generals. Inspector generals sit in different branches of the executive branch to make sure there isn't fraud or violations of the law. People come to them and say, I think we should be concerned about this. They study it. They do a report. The report contains suggestions. The reports are available to Congress. It keeps the integrity in the process of executing the laws. So you get rid of the watchdogs. Who are the other watchdogs? It's the FBI. So President Trump fired a whole lot of the FBI members, career servants, who had the role of investigating and reporting on the executive branch. You get rid of the inspector generals, you get rid of the FBI, you get rid of the watchdogs. Another thing you do is you start to oppress the press, start to create pressure for them to only report good news. And we see this with Trump. And Don and Sandy, you laid it out very well. You gave the list of things he's already done. And then you say, what can you and your fellow members do to protect the media? Well, that is a tough question, because essentially the president doesn't have any power that should exist to be able to pressure the media. The media, the fourth estate, that's essential maintaining freedom in our country. You lose the freedom of the press, you've lost also the freedom of speech. Now, I can tell you I was very, very disheartened to see that Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, decided last week that he's going to suspend the use of the opinion editorial page of the Post to provide a variety of ideas for people to consider, a variety of viewpoints, and only pursue his agenda, his Jeff Bezos agenda. And he described his agenda as free trade, and his interpretation of that is basically probably like no regulation of corporations so they can make a lot more money at the expense of people. And so this decision to proceed to make the opinion page of the Post his personal megaphone rather than a forum for sharing ideas on how to make our country better is very, very disturbing. You know, there's a slogan in the Washington Post, and it's "Democracy dies in the darkness." Well, the press is to shed a light. So I wish the Washington Post would follow its own slogan, because you want to shine a light into every corner and consider reasonable ideas from multiple perspectives, not have it be just a megaphone for the owner of the press. So that was of real concern. Well, this challenge of defending the media, I don't have a great answer for you. I do not yet know. I mean, the answer is mostly in the courts. Are the courts going to allow the president to decide which press entities are admitted and which are excluded? He doesn't like their reports, so he kicks them out of the press pool. Can he do that? Nobody's really raised this question before. I don't know the answer. The courts are going to have to decide, but I do know that it's going to be incredibly important for us to support our local newspapers and to support robust national reporting. We need the Post. We need every major newspaper to help, as well as our local newspaper, keep their eyes on what's happening and tell us what's happening. You know, we can't, social media has so many ability to, bend the truth, to promote conspiracies that just have no foundation. It used to be said when I was a kid that the lie gets halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants on. But now with social media, it's more like the lie has traveled around the world like 4 or 5 times before truth tries to catch up. And by then there's a new lie going around the world that distracts attention from the old lie. So we need a robust press with integrity. And so I guess this is our last question. Are both questions?
If you want to ask them both.
Okay, we got 2 more questions. We got Walt in Roseburg. When are the Democrats going to speak up about big money and politics? What is heck is the richest person doing cutting our government for his benefit? Get big money out of politics. The rich are just getting richer and leave nothing for the poor, the working people. It has to stop. Walt, it sounds like you've been coming to my town halls and hearing me rant on a soapbox about the danger to our democracy, to our republic, from inequality. We like to think about one person, one vote is going to guarantee government by and for the people. But here's what happens when you have vast wealth inequality. Well, those wealthy, they have lawyers 365 days a year. They've got lobbyists swarming Capitol Hill. The pharmaceutical lobby alone has about 3 lobbyists for every member of Congress. It was 2 when I came here 16 years ago. Now it's 3 for every member of Congress. So they have lawyers, they have lobbyists, they have media campaigns to change how issues are framed in favor of the powerful. And then they have regular campaign donations, and if that's not enough, they have the dark money in campaigns that comes from Citizens United. Citizens United, most of you have heard that phrase. This was a Supreme Court decision that said, hey, it's constitutional to put a limit on how much money I can give to a candidate, but it's unconstitutional to put a limit on how much I can give to the candidate's friend to run a campaign on his or her behalf. So these parallel campaigns are completely unlimited. So you and I, if we give more than $200 and we're capped at the maximum we're allowed to give under the law is a couple thousand, we give a couple hundred, we're disclosed, our name, our address, our employment, our age, it's all there, complete disclosure. But if the billionaire gives, say, $10 million, well, you know, they can do it anonymously. I say what's good for us ordinary people is good for the mega millionaires and billionaires. We have to end the dark money in Citizens United. Consider this, a small group of crypto executives put $40 million into one Senate race in like the last 6 weeks of that Senate race. That's corruption, pure and simple. That's government by and for the powerful, pure and simple. I can tell you this, that in the combination of the lawyers, the lobbyists, the media campaigns, and the dark money is destroying the vision of government by and for the people. So Walt, you are absolutely right. So we produced a bill called the Disclose Act that proceeded to say that you can't have anonymous money flowing through the system. We're disclosed, you should be disclosed. We would like to also, and we, by the way, we got 59 votes twice to have the Senate debate that bill, but we couldn't get the 60th, which brings me to why the only way we're going to save our republic is to replace the no-effort veto, which is what the current filibuster is. No effort and secret. It's not public. That is, it doesn't require public debate. With a reform I call the talking filibuster, which means that the debate it'd be hard to slow things down. The minority would have a voice. Hard to slow things down. They have to continuously debate. And the American people could then see the obstruction and weigh in. Are you heroes or are you bums? And there would be a pathway that would encourage compromise. It's a little, maybe too complicated, maybe I haven't described it clearly enough, but essentially right now, the powerful can veto any policy bill from getting to the floor of the Senate. That's the problem, and we have to fix that if we want to restore the vision of government by and for the people. If we want to take on the money in politics, we're going to have to fix the Senate. And finally, Ronald from Hillsborough, a question that comes at every one of my town halls. What action steps can we collectively take to change the direction of the current administration? And Ronald, I want to thank everyone who's asking this question, because it's tempting to just curl up on the sofa. And what I'm encouraging people is just get off the sofa. We have to use every tool in 3 different ways. The first is those who are your electeds, like myself, we have to use every single measure possible in order to put a spotlight on the malfeasance and slow it down, and if we can, find allies across the aisle and stop it. One of the most dangerous people in America is Russell Vogt. He's the head of OMB. As a top Democrat on the Budget Committee, I made sure that we did the maximum amount to publicize who he was and why he would be a terrible choice, because he believes in the vision of the authoritarian vision of deliberately violating the law and breaking the Constitution. And he told me so, and I publicized the hell out of it. And then we went to the Senate floor because we couldn't block the vote. The vote was held despite over our protests in committee. It was held in secret when we demanded that it be done in public. It was done without conversation between the members after we demanded that there be a debate between the members before the vote was taken. So we boycotted the committee vote and instead held a press conference, again, to publicize the challenge. And then we used every single minute of the 30 hours required and went through the night. And I, as the lead Democrat, coordinated this 30-hour vision of every ounce of effort we could do to say this is wrong. And now a lot of people know who Russell Vogt is and what a dangerous man he is, but he's still in place. So we need to use every tool available to us as members on the inside. Second of all, we have to use every court strategy possible and hope and pray that the Supreme Court will actually honor the Constitution. A lot of folks are really worried about that because just recently they discovered a secret line written into the Constitution that said the president can commit any crime he wants and it won't be a crime as long as he calls it a government action, an official government action. This was what the founders feared, that the president would be considered a king, and it's kings who are above the law. That court of originalists who knew, they say they're originalists, but it's phony. They're complete hypocrites because what they really are is a cover story for the corporate court, a court that was plotted by the Federalist Society 30 years ago, and they have delivered with a group of basically fake originalists who use it as a cover story to support corporate power. And that's why they created the Citizens United decision. That's why they created the president is above the law decision, wholly, completely at odds with our Constitution. That's why so many people are worried. But we have to press the courts. We have to expose that hypocrisy and press them to actually honor the Constitution. The third is the power of the people, the power of you all. Ultimately, saving our democracy is going to take people taking to the streets. Now, I was driving through Astoria 2 weekends ago, and there was a protest for about 3 blocks long with people 4 or 5 deep, and it was protesting President Trump's actions. And I'm like, wow, who organized this? I think the organizer was mostly indivisible, but I was told there was another new group that was very involved. And praise to them. We're going to have protests in red counties, in red states, that feel the pressure to House members and Senate members. They're going to have folks turn out to their town halls and hold them accountable. They took an oath to the Constitution. And you know, some Republicans may start to go, oh, you know, I just remembered something. I didn't take an oath to Donald Trump. I took an oath to the Constitution, and I'm going to honor that oath. That's what is going to happen, but only if there's mass action. And we're going to have mass action on the streets of D.C. to help drive this point home. But very importantly, we need mass action in House congressional districts and in U.S. Senate offices across the country. Peaceful, but bold and clear and focused, demanding their representatives to honor their responsibility to the people who elected them. The vision of proceeding with a plan, Trump's plan, in which families lose and billionaires win, is the exact opposite of government by and for the people. It's a great betrayal. President Trump campaigned on being there for working people. And basically, he's screwing them over. And they're going to catch on. But they're going to catch on because we do everything to draw attention to this plan of $2 trillion in cuts to programs, basic programs, healthcare, housing, education, good paying jobs, the 4 foundations for families to thrive. They're trying to demolish those programs in order to fund $2 trillion in cuts of the taxes for the ultra wealthy. Terrible vision for America, a vision of government by and for the powerful. But you all who are listening in tonight, I know you're listening in because you reject that vision. You want to see a vision in which families thrive and billionaires pay their fair share, where we have not government by and for the powerful, but for the people. That is certainly the vision that I'm fighting for. Thank you, Oregonians, for standing up for our nation, standing up for the opportunity for every family to be on its feet and do well, for every child to have an opportunity to live a fulfilling life. We know when our children thrive, they will, as they become adults, contribute so much back to our country. So not only do they do better, but our community, state, and our nation do better. Take care, and I'll see you down the road. And together, let's restore the vision of our republic, of a government of, by, and for the people.